For years, every time someone complimented me, I'd immediately correct them, deflect, or explain why they were actually wrong. Great presentation became, oh, I definitely stumbled on slide 4. It took a while to understand what that reflex was actually protecting, and it wasn't modesty. Here's the mechanism underneath it, and it has a name in psychology: cognitive consistency. Your brain has a strong, well-documented preference for information that matches your existing self-concept over information that contradicts it, even when the contradicting information is positive. If your internal self-concept includes a belief like "I'm not particularly talented," a compliment that directly contradicts that belief creates genuine internal friction, not because the compliment feels bad exactly, but because it doesn't fit the existing model, and your brain works actively to resolve that mismatch, usually by dismissing or minimizing the new information rather than updating the old belief. Why would this evolve as a general tendency at all, rather than just being a personal quirk? Consistency in self-belief served an important stabilizing function. Historically, a self-concept that shifted wildly based on every piece of external feedback would produce unstable, unpredictable behavior, which carried real social costs in a small group setting where reliability mattered. A stable self-concept, even a somewhat negative one, provided a consistent behavioral baseline. The system wasn't built to optimize for accurate or flattering self-perception. It was built to optimize for a stable, internally consistent one. The specific reflex to deflect out loud adds a social layer on top of the internal one. Accepting a compliment plainly can feel, to someone with a lower baseline self-concept, like a kind of dishonesty, agreeing with something that doesn't match what they privately believe to be true. Deflecting resolves that tension quickly, restoring both internal consistency and, they often believe, social honesty, even though from the outside it usually just reads as awkward or self-deprecating. Outsmarting this reflex doesn't require forcing yourself to suddenly believe the compliment fully, which tends to fail the same way most direct belief-changing attempts do. It requires a smaller, more achievable move, separating the act of receiving the compliment from the act of internally agreeing or disagreeing with it. Saying thank you is not a truth claim about your own self-worth. It's a social response to a social offering, and treating it as one rather than as a referendum on your accurate self-assessment removes the internal consistency conflict almost entirely, because you're no longer being asked to instantly update a deep belief just to accept a gift graciously. What actually shifted this for me wasn't a single moment of realization. It was noticing, repeatedly, that deflecting a compliment made the other person visibly uncomfortable too. They'd offered something genuine, and my correction implicitly told them they'd misjudged. Once I started noticing that the deflection wasn't just about me, it became easier to simply say thank you, not because my internal self-concept had suddenly changed, but because I'd found a version of accepting the compliment that didn't require agreeing with it internally at all, just receiving it as the gesture it actually was. There's a specific escalation worth naming, because it doesn't stop at verbal deflection for everyone. Some people respond to compliments by actively working to disprove them going forward, unconsciously sabotaging future performance to keep their self-concept and their results in alignment. This is a more costly version of the same underlying mechanism, and it's worth watching for specifically in yourself if simple verbal deflection doesn't fully capture your pattern. The same reframe applies at this deeper level too. Separating receiving positive feedback from having to internally agree with it removes the pressure to either dismiss it or, more damagingly, to quietly ensure it stops being true.